Welcome to the Imperfectionist Podcast. My name is David Rendall, and I'm very excited about our episode today. And we always start with a question, and today's question is: have you ever gotten a 1-star review? Now, you might say, Dave, I don't have a business. I didn't write a book. I don't write songs. I don't have a podcast. I've never gotten a 1-star review. Let's broaden it a little bit. Have you ever gotten a 1-star review figuratively from your spouse? Have you ever gotten a 1-star review from your child? Have you ever gotten a 1-star review from your employer? Certainly, maybe they didn't give you 1 star, but they told you that you're doing something poorly and that you need to turn things around. I remember my daughter one time when she was 4, she told my wife and I hate you and I wish I had another family. I'm pretty sure that counts as a 1-star review. So that's how I want to start. Have you ever been in a situation where a person gave you some pretty negative feedback, some pretty devastating feedback, and your initial response was to think, it's time to turn things around, right? If I'm getting this 1-star review, it means that I got to get better. I want to get 5-star reviews. And if you do have a business, if you do have a book, if you do have a podcast, if you do write music, I'm sure it hurt your feelings when you got a 1-star review. I got a 1 out of 5 one time from one person at a CPA conference where I spoke. I have a very high overall rating, but you could see how many of each rating you got. And I got one 1 out of 5 review from this one guy. And he said, well, I feel like he told too many jokes, right? In his mind, we should have been more professional. We should have been more focused. We should have taken more time to dig into the material. He wasn't there to have fun. He was there to learn. And he didn't need any kind of entertainment in order to get him there. So we've probably all been in situations where we get negative feedback. And that's what I want to talk about today, because the natural instinct is find and fix weaknesses. You just found out about an imperfection. This is the Imperfectionist Podcast. Time to fix that imperfection, time to fix that weakness, time to do something about that. And I want to give you a different way to think about it today, but I wanted to personalize it. I want you to really think about that time when you received that critical negative feedback. And maybe now in retrospect, you have a different perspective on it than you did at the time. So that's the question of the day. The quote of the day is going to come from the book of the day, which you can see if you're watching this on YouTube. But if you're not, I'll tell you here what it is. It's called Subpar Parks by Amber Scher. It's kind of cool. I live outside of Raleigh, and I found out she's from Raleigh. Just moved, though. I think she's just moving now. I saw on Instagram up to the Northeast. The subtitle is America's Most Extraordinary National Parks and Their Least Impressed Visitors. So what Amber discovered was that she loves the national parks. She loves the outdoors. That's part of why she's moving to the Northeast, is to be able to explore that more. And what Amber discovered was every national park has at least one star review. Now let's think about that for a second. The national parks are the most beautiful and valuable, such that they need to be preserved, parts of this entire massive country that goes from Florida to Maine to Alaska to Hawaii to California to Texas, right? All sorts of different climates and environments. And yet, and this is the crucial thing for today, somebody went to the Grand Canyon, one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, not of America, of the world, and was like, thumbs down, right? No good, not impressed, do better. And so that's the key thing I want you to think about. And the quote's going to get there in just a second, but I want to set it up. If you think you can get exclusively 5-star reviews on your parenting, on your marriage, on your work, on your business, on your podcast, on whatever it is, your music. You can't. Not because you're not good enough, but because everyone sees perfection and imperfection differently. And someone went to one of the most beautiful and amazing places on earth and was like, don't like it. And not even I don't like it a little bit. It's terrible. And I wish I never came here. And I'm never coming back. And I'm motivated enough that I want you to not ever go there either. And so if you think somehow you can be better than the Grand Canyon, good luck. But that's why this is called the Imperfectionist Podcast, because part of what I'm trying to do is persuade you that perfection isn't possible, right? Because even when you think you've achieved perfection, there's somebody else who comes along and looks at your perfection and says, I don't see it. I don't like it. Now, to be real clear, too, early on, since this is called the Imperfectionist Podcast, you might think I'm against perfectionism, and I'm not. If you are a perfectionist, that's something that people call your weakness. You love perfection, and you want to make things perfect, and then people want to turn that into a weakness and tell you you need to dial it back and relax and stop worrying about perfection. So even your perfectionist, and by the way, if you don't think we can make everything negative, someone who pursues perfection passionately, we just add ist to the end of the word and we use it as a slur. We use it as a way to criticize them. Oh, you're a perfectionist. Oh, I'm sorry that I care about perfection. I'm sorry that I'm trying to do things better, right? So I'm not saying if you're a perfectionist to stop trying to be a perfectionist. What I'm telling you is that if you're thrown off by 1-star reviews and you think it's possible to get everyone everywhere to get excited about whatever it is you're doing, that won't happen. And there's some amazing ways to see sort of the truth of that. So Amber Share is her name. You can find her on Instagram, Amber Share. I think it's Amber Shares on Instagram, and she also has the handle Subpar Parks, which is the name of this book, Amber Share, Subpar Parks. So I'm just going to read a little section. It's more of a paragraph than a quote, but she says, I hope this book can also teach us to laugh at our own critics, including the one in our own head. Sometimes, ooh, that's good. Sometimes we're the one giving ourselves the 1-star review. It's not somebody else. We're giving ourselves the 1-star review, right? I hope this book can teach us to laugh at our own critics, including the one in our own head, and recognize the imperfect humans we all are, and let that go. If the best the planet has to offer can get a 1-star review, you don't have a chance of pleasing everyone. Let me say that again, because that's the quote for the day. If the best the planet has to offer, the Grand Canyon is one of the 7 natural wonders of the world, and it got a 1-star review. If the best the planet has to offer can get a 1-star review, you don't have a chance of pleasing everyone. And as many of the 1-star reviews that actively contradict one another prove, for example, one person complained about too many bears at one of the national parks, and then someone complained that there weren't enough bears, right? So even the 1-star reviews, somebody's criticizing you for the same thing someone else is praising you for. Someone else is praising you for the same thing else somebody else is criticizing you for. How would you fix that? Is there the right amount of bears? Right? Apparently not, because somebody thought it was. There will always be someone ready to complain no matter what you do, right? But here's the key one for today. If the best the planet has to offer can get a 1-star review, you don't have a chance of pleasing everyone. So we started with the question, what kind of 1-star reviews have you gotten? And you might think, okay, if I get a 1-star, I want to get them to 2, I want to get them to 3, I want to get them to 4, I want to get them to 5. I need to turn them around, I need to fix it, I need to do something to correct it. What I'm telling you today is that's not true. That's not what you need to do. And in fact, what would the Grand Canyon do? Right? The review, by the way, the 1-star review for the Grand Canyon is a hole, a really big hole. They were disappointed that the Grand Canyon was a very grand Canyon, because big means grand and canyon means hole, right? Which is, by the way, what a lot of people do when they make fun of these national parks, is their criticism is exactly what the place is. Hot Springs National Park. Don't waste your time unless you're really into hot springs. It's in the name. Hot Springs is in the name. It's telling you that it's a hot springs. And then you're upset that it's a hot springs. My favorite one, and I use this in my pink goldfish presentations because that's where we talked about Amber's book. That's where I found out about it, and we immediately included it in Pink Goldfish 2.0, where we talk about this, and I'll be reading a little bit from that later. One of the ones that I include in the Pink Goldfish keynote that I do, I just did it recently for a home care company franchise out in Vegas, Home Helpers. One of my favorites is somebody went to Hawaii Volcanoes National Park and said, didn't even get to touch the lava, right? Didn't even get to touch the lava. What do you do with somebody like that? Can you really make somebody like that happy? I kind of want to take them out and give them a chance to touch the lava, and then see what their review is after that, if they actually got a chance to touch the lava. So people just even criticize a place. You could say, well, maybe these places need to set expectations, maybe communicate it better. No, they get criticized for exactly the thing that they said that they do. Great Sand Dunes National Park in Colorado. Now, I want you to imagine in your mind for a second, what do you think Great Sand Dunes National Park looks like? I bet it's big piles of sand. That's what a sand dune is. So it tells you it's great, just like Grand Canyon, big hole. Great sand dunes. The criticism, it's just a big mountain of sand. In other words, you gave me exactly what I was told I was going to get, and now I'm frustrated about it, and I want you to fix it. And that's what I want you to ask yourself is, the reason I use these as an example, the reason we're starting with this is because when it's you, it can seem like you could do it better. You could make better music. You could write a better book. You could have a better podcast. You could put out better clothing. You could be a nicer spouse. You could be a better parent, whatever it happens to be. So it seems fixable. When it's the Grand Canyon, what would it do to get better? How would the Great Sand Dune stop being such a big mountain of sand? Grand Teton National Park, all I saw was a lake, mountains, and trees. Yeah, that sounds like what it is. Grand Tetons basically means big mountains, right? So that's the key thing to understand when you're thinking about this. I want you to remember anytime that you're, I'm flipping through it as I'm talking. Carlsbad Caverns, these are caves, poorly lit and just plain, right? Poorly lit. Yeah, it's a cave, right? It's a cave. Bryce Canyon National Park, too orange, too spiky. Arches National Park, doesn't look anything like the license plate. So you can't make everybody happy. Everybody's going to give you 1-star reviews. There's no way for you to stop it. And even if you were as amazing as the Grand Canyon, it wouldn't make everybody happy. And you're not as amazing as the Grand Canyon, and you probably don't have the potential to be one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. And so I want to remove that as a possibility. So then the only possibility is, if I'm going to be imperfect, that's why this is the Imperfectionist podcast. If I'm going to be imperfect and people are going to give me 1-star reviews, how can I stop focusing on the 1-star reviews and thinking I'm going to make those people happy, and start focusing on the 5-star reviews and figure out what it is I'm doing that's working and find a way to keep it working? So I got interested. I thought, I wonder if, Amber, and by the way, she has a new book coming out that I want to tell you about. And again, I'm not sponsored by. We've done that before, and we're going to be not sponsored by some other people. I'm not sponsored by Subpar Parks or Amber Share, but she has a new book coming out October 2024, because this is not just an American phenomenon, called Subpar Planet. And if you go to her Instagram, you can see some previews of some of those where she starts doing parks all over the world, in other countries, in other places, and additional American parks that are not national parks. So if you go there, you can see a little bit more about Subpar Planet. You can order that one. I've already pre-ordered it. I'm super excited um, about that. But I started wondering, I wonder if Amber's book about about parks with 1-star reviews has 1-star reviews. And so I went to Amazon. Well, first I was looking at mine, and I'm going to share some of those with you later, because I have a number of books and they have 1-star reviews. But she has a lot, right? She has a lot. Now, again, you might think, oh, well, she should do something about that. So before I read her 1-star reviews, that I want you to know that in two different categories, she's either number 3 in all of Amazon for that category, or number 7, right? And I forget which is which. One is like travel guides, one is like illustrated something. Okay. So she has one of the top 10 books in two different categories. Two different categories. And yet she has a pile of 1-star reviews. So here's one of them. To read the description and the squibs on the cover, one thinks that the book is a collection of funny reviews from disappointed park visitors. Not so. There is one, count them, one very short review per park. The rest of the chapter, one chapter per park, is a travelogue of the park, and not a very thorough one. This is a vehicle to sell the author's artwork. She includes one drawing per park. I would not have purchased this book had I known it. Now, the person said, this was supposed to be a collection of funny reviews from disappointed park visitors. There's 63 national parks. So if she included one per park, her 200-page book has 63 negative reviews. Also, her Instagram is basically the book online. Anyway, I'm not going to argue with these people, but she has one of the most popular books in travel guides and an illustrated something or other on all of Amazon.com, which has millions and millions and millions of books. And these people are not impressed. T. Wright says it was disappointing. The cover leads one to believe that this is a collection of offbeat reviews from disaffected park visitors. Not so. More like a long, boring book report of facts gleaned from the web. The book arrived wet. That's my favorite. The book is okay. Surprisingly, barely mentioned the reviews of the parks, which I thought would be the future. The worst part is it arrived wet. Come on, Amber. Stop selling wet books on Amazon, right? So, this is just a great example of how you're not going to be able to avoid 1-star reviews. Now, to be clear, she has way more 5-star reviews, but how many times have you ever focused more on the negative reviews than the positive reviews? Focused more on your weaknesses than your strengths? Focused more on your imperfections than your perfections, right? So I'll share some of my 1-star reviews, because I'm not telling you to do something that I don't have to do myself. Do I want to get a 1-star review? Absolutely not. But do I realize what I'm telling you today, which is that it's unavoidable, and that I don't need to rewrite the book. I don't need to start over. I don't need to make the adjustment. I just need to realize this is part of what happens anytime you do anything, or anytime that you create anything. So this is one of my favorites for Pink Goldfish, which we talked about Amber Share's book in Pink Goldfish 2.0. And this is a 1-star review from India, from just November, so not too long ago. And the 1-star review is bad paper quality, right? Bad paper quality. So, I guess I need to print it on. New paper. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do there. And then from my kids' book Freak Factor for Kids, which tells the story of growing up with significant weaknesses and then discovering that they were strengths. And here's a critical thing to know. I put the Freak Factor for Kids, I had somebody read it and turn it into a video, and I put it on YouTube for free because I want kids with ADHD to be able to have it read to them if they're not going to read. Dyslexia, if a kid has dyslexia and he can't read or won't read, I want him or her to be able to have the book read to them. If a kid has autism and struggles with reading, or would just prefer to get it in that format, I wanted to make that available. I'm trying to get the message out. I'm not trying to sell books for people. So that's something to know. This one I got one from France. This person was very upset, and it was fun to get one in French, so I had to have it translated. Not worth the price. Some drawings accompanied by annotations, also known as an illustrated children's book. Pictures with some words. It's not worth £7. As a result, I hesitated to buy the adult book. I think that's funny when people call my book an adult book. It makes it sound dirty, and it's not. This person says not recommended. Check this out at a library, Jay McGee says, or better yet, read it at the library and don't bother with carrying it around into your house. My 7-year-old daughter read this book in about 10 minutes. What kind of long books is your 7-year-old reading, right? This is not worth buying at $15. The message is good, but it's nothing more than embrace your differences as you can leverage them when you're an adult. An absolute ripoff for the price. Now, again, do I like to see that? No. Do I like my ratings going down and knowing that some people actually won't buy this book and they won't get the benefit from it because this person is furious that it wasn't longer or it didn't have more words or that their 7-year-old read it quickly? Again, I don't know what kind of kids book a 7-year-old's reading. Or are they reading, books that take them 3.5 hours? What kind of operation is this person running at their house? And this is a theme: small pamphlet at best from Kathy E. Now a book, not a book is what I think she meant to say. Just a few pages, not very impressive, expected more. Again, Amazon will tell you how many pages one is. You can look inside, whatever. But that's the point, right? I don't go on and argue with these people. I don't go on and try to make these people happy. What I recognize is I can't make these people happy. They're upset. It shouldn't affect, and this is the whole message from today, it shouldn't affect my behavior. The Grand Canyon doesn't need to get better. Hawaii Volcanoes National Park doesn't need to let people start touching the lava. I don't need to make my kids' book longer and have more words and less pictures. I don't need to print pink goldfish on better paper. This is a 1-star review of the Freak Factor book. The premise, a lot of nonsense. Also, another misspelling just in the thing. So I wonder sometimes, I'd love to criticize these people for being illiterate, but it says a lot on nonsense instead of a lot of nonsense. And nonsense is capitalized at the, anyway. Premise starts out sounding like it makes sense, but boy, it goes downhill fast, and he spends more time quoting other people than having any original thoughts of his own. Does that hurt my feelings? Absolutely. Am I excited to read that? Absolutely not. Am I going to do anything differently? Do I need to change my business model? Do I need to put out a revised version of the book? No. Do I need to waste any time and energy trying to make this person happy and win this person over? And the answer is no. Right? So I'm not just telling you what I think you should do. I'm not just telling you to ignore this. I'm telling you that, just like Amber said at the beginning, if a national treasure is going to get a 1-star review, right? If the best the planet has to offer, forget national treasure, if the best the planet has to offer can get a 1-star review, you don't have any chance of pleasing everyone. So what are you supposed to do, right? What you got to do is you have to start thinking about, where do you get your advice? Where do you get your feedback? And what do you do with that feedback? Is all feedback valuable? Is all feedback something you should take action on? And I think the answer is no, right? Um, do you think everybody who gave me a 1-star review on my books has written a book, has written a children's book, has printed a book on better paper than whatever paper that I printed it on? When somebody tells you how to run your business better, are they running a business better? Oftentimes they're not running a business at all. Have you ever gotten parenting advice from somebody without a kid? Have you ever gotten marriage advice from somebody who isn't married or is divorced? Right? And then we take it seriously, or we act like it has some kind of value, when in fact that person may not know anything about the subject that they're telling you about. It's just their feeling about it. It's just their perspective. It's just their mindset about it. There's nothing that we actually need to do um, about it. So I want to tell you some fun things that people have done with their 1-star reviews, um, and uh, show you that you could even go a little bit farther um, with this. One thing I wanted to start doing on each of the podcasts is having maybe a song and some song lyrics. I have a whole Freak Factor playlist, a whole Imperfectionist playlist. And there's a song by Pink called Raise Your Glass. And the lyrics that I like are: raise your glass if you are wrong in all the right ways. Right? Raise your glass if you are wrong in all the right ways. And that's the point, right? Amber Scher's book is wrong, but it's also right. It's bad, but it's also good. Some people don't like it, and other people think it's one of the best books on all of Amazon in the category. I've had people tell me that the kids' book, I mean, let's just take the kids' book, for example. A woman bought it for her son with ADHD. He was 10 years old. He wrote me a note. He said, "Thank you, Mr. Rendall, for the book. It made me feel better about who I am." I was the first person who told a 10-year-old with ADHD that what seemed like the worst thing about him, his ADHD, was actually the best thing about him, that his biggest imperfection was actually the best thing about him, that his biggest disadvantage was actually an advantage. I know that the book has transformed lives, and so yes, it might be wrong to some people, but it's wrong in all the right ways, right? There's actually a hotel in uh, Vegas where I've spoken, and I saw the ad first before I ended up speaking there, the Cosmopolitan. And it says, I think it says, just the right amount of wrong, or something along those lines, right? So that's what I want us to embrace, right? Not just like accept. Two of the parts of the freak factor in this model of imperfection is acceptance and then appreciation. And if we can't accept it, then we can't appreciate it. But if all we do is accept it, like grudgingly, like, well, I guess some people think my book is terrible, that's not all there is, right? You can actually get to the point where you're excited that anybody cares enough to even read your book. Nobody can give a 1-star review to a book that you didn't write. They can't give a 1-star review to a song that you didn't write, to a company that you didn't create. You can't get negative feedback from a relationship that you don't have, right? So I love that from Pink. Raise your glass. And obviously, I'm a Pink fan, right? What are the chances? Raise your glass if you are wrong in all the right ways. What's raising your glass? It's celebrating, right? Cheers to you if there's people who think you're the worst, because there's other people who look at that same thing, and this is crucial. They look at that same thing and think it's the best, right? So raise your glass if you are wrong in all the right ways. Celebrate it, right? Celebrate it. So speaking of raising a glass, this isn't a glass. It's a can of Liquid Death mountain water. Remember, the Imperfectionist podcast is still not sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water. I don't just have my can of Liquid Death today. I'm actually wearing my Liquid Death sweatshirt. So raise a can of Liquid Death if you're wrong in all the right ways. Not sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water. So one of the reasons I decided to use Amber's book for this episode is because my wife and I just took a trip to 5 of the national parks. that we have in the United States. We flew out to Salt Lake City, and um, they have 5 national parks in Utah that are all within just a couple of hours. Some are less than 2 hours apart, and so you can see a lot of them very, very quickly. And so that kind of got me thinking about that, and I thought this would be a perfect thing to talk about on this week's podcast. Um, there's a great quote in Amber's book from Alice Walker. So this isn't Amber's quote, but it's in her book, um, and it says, "In nature, nothing is perfect, and everything is perfect. Trees can be contorted, bent in weird ways, and they're still beautiful." I don't remember if I've talked about this yet on the podcast, but there's a concept in Japan called wabi sabi, which says that nature is beautiful and nature is imperfect, and therefore imperfection can be beautiful. That's the fundamental concept of this podcast. So I'm going to read that again. In nature, nothing is perfect and everything is perfect. Trees can be contorted, bent in weird ways, and they're still beautiful, right? What if we applied that to ourselves, right? In life, no one is perfect and everyone is perfect. People can be contorted, bent in weird ways, and they're still beautiful. I absolutely love that. So, since we went to the 5 national parks in Utah, I thought I'd read the reviews for the 5 national parks in Utah. So we started in the south. We started in Zion, and we went west to east. And so I'll read you the different reviews from the different parks that we went to. So I already told you about arches. So if you've ever been to Utah, there's this beautiful like orange arch that's actually on the license plate for a significant part of Utah, and it's so cool that of all the beauty that exists in Utah, they decided that they would put it on the license plate. And then the person's criticism of the Arches National Park, seeing it in person, they said it looks nothing like the license plate, right? Looks nothing like the license plate. And then they went on. Another negative review for the same place was, "Don't waste your time." Now, again, I was just there, and it's one of the most amazing places I've ever been, and one of the most beautiful things that I've ever seen. Bryce Canyon National Park, amazing, definitely worth it. Goes all the way up to something like 9,600 feet. Amazing views, amazing structures. They have these things called hoodoos, which are these like natural sculptures that come up out of the ground, made of rock, and they're just absolutely amazing. Too Orange and Too Spiky. Canyonlands National Park, a disappointment to us. Disappointment to us. Not as good as it could have been. Capitol Reef National Park, sort of right in the middle of the state down there in the south. Somewhat bland. Somewhat bland. So every one of the national parks that we visited, we thought were amazing, and other people thought were worthless. I just found one of my other favorites while I was flipping through. Glacier National Park. Now, again, let's stop for a second. What's a glacier? A glacier is a giant sheet of ice, sort of like a massive iceberg. And the review was too cold for me. Yeah, it's a giant piece of ice. It's going to get chilly. And if it stopped being chilly, there wouldn't be a Glacier National Park anymore. That's definitely what happened. It definitely is cold there. Amber was snarky, and I like it. She says, apparently calling the park a glacier wasn't a strong enough hint as to the climate of the area. So those are the reviews from the 5 national parks that we visited while we were over there. Saguaro National Park, we didn't visit this one, but this is hilarious. Okay if you like cactus. Yeah, guess what a saguaro is? It's a type. Here's what she calls it: the majestic saguaro, North America's largest cactus. And the person's like, yeah, if you're into cactus, it's called cactus. The other one that I use in my presentation, White Sands National Park in New Mexico, is the 1-star review is literally miles of white sand. Yeah, it's called White Sands National Park. It's a big place full of white sand. And so, again, what would they do? Do they need to mix in some other colors of sand? What would they do to get that person to not write that 1-star review? And the answer clearly is nothing. Right? There's nothing they could do to get that person to be happy. There's nothing you can do to turn that kind of stuff around. This isn't actionable feedback. You don't need to make changes based on this. So I've got my Liquid Death shirt on, sweatshirt on. I'm drinking Liquid Death. We are not sponsored by Liquid Death Mountain Water. We are also not sponsored by Snowbird. So if you're watching, I have a Snowbird hat on that Stan, my co-author on Pink Goldfish, Stan Phelps, my co-author on Pink Goldfish, got for me while we were doing our book tour. I had to leave a couple times on the tour to go do presentations. And when he went through Snowbird, he got me a Snowbird hat. It's a ski resort in Utah. So why did we stop there? Well, because they're in the book. And they're in the book because they turned their 1-star reviews into advertisements. So remember, I said this isn't just about acceptance, it's about appreciation. And things that some people like, other people don't like. The thing that repels some people attracts other people. And one of the things we explain in Pink Goldfish is you want to expose these things. You want to share these things. You don't need to hide these things. It's okay to have transparency about the fact that some people don't like you. They don't like your business. They don't like your products. They don't like your services. They don't like your personality. They don't like your style, whatever it happens. They don't like the way you dress. They don't like whatever it is about you. Okay. And we talked in the first episode. If you haven't listened, I'd encourage you to go back to the first episode. It's kind of foundational. We talked about flaunting. Flaunting is to parade it without shame. It's to be unashamed and unapologetic. Well, that really applies when people are giving you 1-star reviews, because if they're giving you 1-star reviews, they're almost asking for an apology. They're asking for a coupon. They're asking for you to make changes and do something differently because you've disappointed them. And that is not what we recommend. And as Amber explained, it doesn't even accomplish anything, because what's the Grand Canyon going to do to stop being a big hole, a very, very large hole? It can't stop doing that. And in fact, that's what almost everyone loves. Or people travel from all over the world. If you go to the Grand Canyon, and I'd encourage you to do it, I've done the rim to rim to rim hike twice. If you haven't been to the Grand Canyon, you should go. But if you've gone, you recognize that it is not just Americans there. It is not just Canadians and people from other countries nearby. People come from thousands and thousands and thousands of miles away to see the Grand Canyon. It's a once in a lifetime experience for a lot of people in the world. And someone else is like, no good, right? No good. So here's what Snowbird did. Instead of apologizing for 1-star reviews and instead of giving coupons or trying to make those people happy, they actually turned the 1-star reviews into advertisements. So they took the 1-star review, they put it on a magazine, on a billboard, and a magazine is like a 2-page fold out magazine with a beautiful picture of their ski resort, and then the 1-star review. Here's some of the ones that they used in their advertisements. Jeremiah from Manchester, New Hampshire said, "No easy runs. We felt like our lives were in our own hands." Now I want you to stop for a second, and I want you to ask yourself, why do some people go skiing? And the answer is for the adventure and for the danger and for the thrill and for the adrenaline. So when Snowbird says Jeremiah felt like he was taking his life into his hands and there's no easy runs here, what do a lot of ski enthusiasts hear? I want to go to Snowbird because there's no easy runs and I'm going to feel like I'm taking my life into my hands. And this is really crucial for what we're talking about, because some of the other ones weren't as clear that way. When somebody tells you pink goldfish is printed on bad paper, that doesn't necessarily make you want to read the book. But when somebody says the kid's book is short and easy to read and their 7-year-old knocked it out in 10 minutes, that's a criticism that you might think, yeah, that's good. Wow, a kid even read the book. That's impressive. But what these do is they illustrate how someone's unhappiness is directed towards something that's actually very, very attractive to someone else. It's repelling one person and it's attracting a lot of other people. The next one they used was just from Elizabeth in Dallas, Texas, just said, disappointed. Are the people who operate the grooming equipment on strike or something? I was hoping for a little more corduroy to put my skis into. The next one is from Greg in Los Angeles. Too advanced. I heard Snowbird is a tough mountain, but this is ridiculous. I felt like every trail was a steep chute or littered with tree wells. How is anybody supposed to ride that? Not fun. Now, again, what do a lot of skiers want to think about themselves? They want to think that they're pretty advanced. And so when they put out this 1-star review that they're too advanced, it attracts two kinds of people. People who want advanced skiing and people who think they can handle advanced skiing even if they can't. Just like some people shop at Target when they should be shopping at Walmart because they wish they were in the tax bracket, in the income bracket of being a Target shopper, they should really be at Walmart instead, right? Some people go to advanced ski mountains when they should be on the bunny hill somewhere else. So this attracts two different kinds of people with a seemingly negative 1-star review. So that's why I have my Snowbird hat on. Snowbird is a great example. That's on page 136 of Pink Goldfish. I love this from Laura Burgles, Bergells. She's fantastic. I think she's up in Michigan. We visited her on the tour. She teaches people how to communicate and present more effectively. She said, as I talk to clients who've been upset by negative reviews and haters, I often drop the line, your brand is often defined by the people who hate you. It inspires people who might otherwise have been indifferent to see what the fuss is about. When people find out the hatred is unwarranted, they stick around to defend and love you. And that actually happened. I was practicing what I preached, and I posted a couple of my 1-star reviews for the kids' book. And a couple of people who'd read the kids' book but hadn't reviewed it went online and posted aggressively positive reviews for the book and sort of took a shot at some of the people who'd posted 1-star reviews. But there's nothing to support if no one's attacking you. Oftentimes, it draws out the supporters when somebody else is criticizing you and people feel like that criticism is unfair. And so I love that from Laura. Vienna, Austria, took a page from the Snowbird book, and they actually displayed, projected their 1-star reviews of one of their museums, the Leopold Museum in Vienna. Somebody said, 1-star, paintings are disgusting. That was Toby M's review of the Leopold Museum in Vienna. So they actually took that 1-star review and they projected it with lights onto the side of the actual museum. Instead of trying to hide it, they displayed it, and they did a whole campaign in 2019 called Unrating Vienna to highlight the bad yet funny reviews in hopes of convincing people to see Vienna for themselves before forming an opinion. So their director of their tourism board said, we take a humorous look at the notion that online ratings are not always the right path to take. When it comes to looking for relaxation and moments of enjoyment, the campaign is intended to make people sit up and think and trigger broader public discussion. So this isn't just a one-time thing. This isn't just Amber and the national parks. This isn't just a city in Austria. This isn't just a ski resort in Utah. This is something that you can do in your life, in your work, and even in your relationships, to realize that it isn't possible to go through life. It isn't possible to exist without sooner or later getting 1-star reviews from people. And success in life does not come from avoiding 1-star reviews, because it simply isn't possible. If you don't hear anything else from me today, that's the message. It simply isn't possible to avoid 1-star reviews. And so that's why I want you to embrace your imperfections, instead of thinking, I need to fix it, I need to fix it, I need to fix it, I need to fix it. So we talked about Snowbird. I'm taking a look at my notes here. We talked about Subpar Parks. We talked about Vienna. We talked about Amber's 1-star reviews. Another great example of sort of leaning into and flaunting parent weakness. And I don't know if I've used this example before, but it's one of my favorite. Nebraska, the state in the United States, in sort of the Midwest, the sort of the western side of the Midwest, was for years, from 2014 to 2018, was 50th out of 50 states in tourism. In other words, they were last. Nobody wanted to go to Nebraska, and nobody was going to Nebraska. So they hired John Ricks to be their tourism director. I wouldn't have wanted to take that job. It's tough, but also there's nowhere to go but up. And John and his team pioneered a new approach to the tourism campaign there. And they changed the slogan from, it used to be, visit Nebraska, visit nice. Now, that's not offensive, that's not problematic, that's not negative, and yet nobody cared, right? Visit Nebraska, visit nice. What does it mean that it's nice? Why would I go there? Nobody cared. It was invisible. And that's the big danger, by the way. When you try to avoid any 1-star reviews, when you try to avoid criticism, you're probably just going to end up invisible. And if you stand out, if you stick out, you are going to garner some type of criticism. That's just the reality. So Nebraska goes from visit Nebraska, visit nice, to Nebraska. Honestly, it's not for everyone. And that new slogan, Nebraska, honestly, it's not for everyone, went viral. Stephen Colbert was talking about it on his monologue. He came up with a bunch of other slogans for other cities and states based on making fun of them. And then he ended his monologue he leaned in really close to the camera and he said, Nebraska, are you okay? And they quickly jumped on Twitter at the time and said, no, Stephen, we are not okay. That is Oklahoma. So they were able to turn this idea of we're not perfect and everyone doesn't like it into a slogan, because it's true for anywhere. New York City isn't for everyone. Colorado isn't for everyone. Alaska isn't for everyone. Hawaii isn't for everyone. Disney World isn't for everyone. No one is for everyone. Nothing is for everyone. And so assuming that you're going to get all 5-star reviews is ridiculous. Nebraska, though, acknowledged it, admitted it, right? Unashamed, unapologetic, but also accepted the reality that people aren't that excited about Nebraska, or they weren't, and then endeavored to get them excited about it. So one of their sub campaigns was, lucky for you, there's nothing to do here. So they kind of played into like, why doesn't everybody, we're not for everyone. Why not? Because there's nothing to do here. But in the nothing to do here ad, they showed people floating down the river in a cow trough, which is a tank built for giving water to cows that cows can drink out of. And these people were floating down the river in it. They just had one paddle. They have a couple of coolers. They're obviously enjoying themselves, but they're relaxing. They're not going down, a whitewater rapids in Colorado and risking their lives. They're just floating and having a good time. And guess what? Some people just want to float and have a good time. They don't want to climb a mountain or go down a raging river, right? So Nebraska understood and acknowledged and admitted imperfections, but those imperfections were also very, very attractive to some people. Some people don't want to go next door to Colorado. They want to go to Nebraska and they want to float down a river. They don't want to do anything. They want to relax. Right? And so Nebraska has had a lot of success with that. In fact, I got to go out and speak to their tourism conference, because even though it was effective, and even though it was working, and interest in Nebraska went up, and website visits went up, and requests for guides went up, and people loved the campaign, a lot of people from Nebraska didn't like that the campaign seemed to be critical of Nebraska. They wanted to say, well, no, Nebraska is for everyone and it's wonderful and we like it here and we don't know why anybody else wouldn't. They couldn't accept the imperfections of Nebraska. They couldn't accept that Nebraska isn't for everyone. And they were actually fighting a winning campaign and fighting the person who created that campaign to try to get him to stop it. And so I actually got hired to go speak at the tourism conference to tell them, this is a good campaign. You should keep it. It's working. This is smart. And it's also just true. And if you go back to Visit Nebraska, Visit Nice, or some other kind of neutral or nonsense sort of thing, or something that isn't offensive or isn't problematic or isn't true, it's not going to work because no one is going to believe you anyway, because nothing's perfect and we know that. And so that's the other thing about this is if you don't admit imperfection, it doesn't mean that people don't know about them. It just means that people think you lack self-awareness or think that you're being dishonest about your product or your service or your business or your community. And so, there's a transparency and an authenticity. We talked about that in the episode with Colette Hammond, a second episode. If you haven't heard that one, I'd encourage you to check that out. She talked a lot about authenticity. There's an authenticity that comes from acknowledging that you get 1-star reviews sometimes. And even if they offer something you should have done differently, even better than acknowledge we made a mistake and we are going to try to correct it because it was something that we didn't do intentionally. It wasn't part of who we were. It wasn't part of what we're trying to sell. It isn't something that we're trying to cultivate, right? So that's the value as well of acknowledging your 1-star reviews. And publishing your 1-star reviews. There's a guy I know named Don Britton, who I know through Entrepreneurs Organization, and he owned a technology company, and they just had their online feedback just scrolling down the front page of their website. They got a good review, it's scrolled down. They got a bad review, it's scrolled down. It's transparency, it's authenticity. We call it exposing, but it's being honest. Even if it isn't like we've been talking about where it is something you would want to change, it is something you would want to fix. When you're honest about those things to yourselves and others, that makes for better relationships as well, because sometimes things do fall into that category. So check out Amber's book. Remember, it's Amber Share is her name. Subpar Parks, America's Most Extraordinary National Parks and Their Least Impressed Visitors. New book coming out in October 2024, Subpar Planet. But I want to close with a story of a guy named David Saratini. And he is an Italian guy who ran an Italian restaurant called Botto Bistro in Northern California. And he got the feeling that Yelp was kind of trying to strong arm him and push him into trying to get better reviews with them. And so he decided to do something completely different. So he sold kind of authentic Italian style pizza. It wasn't what people were used to. It wasn't thick crust. It didn't have lots of cheese. It didn't come with ranch. That's a big thing in California. If you didn't know that, people like to dip it in ranch. And so he took a very antagonistic approach to getting good reviews and to dealing with his customers. And so what he did was he offered 50% off if you would give him a 1-star review on Yelp. And this is why I close with this one. Because now we're not just talking about accepting it when it happens, appreciating when it happens. He was actually trying to make it happen. He was undermining the whole idea that there can be a system that rates things and you can find out if they're good or bad based on customer reviews. What he was saying is customers have no idea what they're talking about. I know what good pizza is. I make good pizza, and if you don't like it, that's fine, but that's got nothing to do with what I should or shouldn't be doing. And oh, do I love that. I think there's probably a better way to say his name because it's David like mine, but then it has an E on it. And so I don't know if it's Davida or Davide or something like that. So I'm sure I'm messing it up, but this is the Imperfectionist podcast. And by the way, this is a great one to talk about for this. For the future, including this episode, I'd love for you to look for imperfections in the podcast. Some of them might be intentional, some might not be intentional. For example, I'll say one that I've potentially noticed. I've got my video set up and I've worked with my brother-in-law on the lighting and everything like that. And I'm pretty happy with how the hat isn't blocking the light and stuff. But I did feel like a couple times, if you're watching this on YouTube, that the camera's on like an autofocus thing. And I feel like it kind of focused in on the back sometimes and took the focus off of my face. Maybe it was because I was showing books or something and I was, moving things around and it messed up the autofocus. And then it, sort of came back over time. So I was kind of jiggling around trying to fix that. So that's an example. If you say, hey, you said something wrong. Hey, you said the book wrong. You said the name wrong. Your audio cut out. Your lighting wasn't right. You should do this or that. I'd love to hear your discoveries of imperfections that you notice in the podcast. And then I'd love to talk about those in the future. And again, I'm not going to antagonize you for that. I'm not trying to trap you into that. This is a podcast that won't be perfect. And I'd love to make a way that we can interact with each other, that you say, hey, here's something that went wrong. Here's something that was a mistake. That did just happen. And I won't use the person's name, but it was pretty funny. Somebody got online and told me, hey, Dave, Stosh was your guest on the last podcast, but you never said his last name. So I thought, oh boy, that's a pretty big mistake. So I told her his last name and I shared his website and sent his podcast link to her. It's called the Insubordinate Podcast, Stosh Walsh. The Insubordinate Podcast, his website is called Constant Organizational Development. That's his company's name. And that's the episode right before this one that just came out a couple of days ago. So, or last week by the time this comes out. So check that one out with Stosh Walsh. But I was rewatching the podcast, and it's the first thing I say is welcome, Stosh Walsh. And then I asked him to tell us silly ways that people mess up his name. So, somebody said you didn't do this and I need the information, and I gave them the information, but I did do it. And so, that kind of stuff happens, and it doesn't make me mad. And I'd rather have somebody, try to correct something than go on, with mistakes that I didn't intend. Right. If somebody says, Dave, you wear too much pink, I'm not going to do something about that because that's something I'm doing intentionally. Right. I don't like your pink headphones. I don't like your face. I don't like your background, whatever. Anyway, so David Saratini starts offering people 50% off of pizza if they'll give him a 1-star review on Yelp. So this is hilarious. If you go look at the Bado Bistro reviews on Yelp, and I think you can still see him, and if not, you can see him on his website, which still exists, even though he's since sold the business to another pizza company, and then became, you can find him this way, he's become the 1-star chef. And so you can hire him to do cooking lessons and other things. And his new whole title is 1-star chef. So you can see how he's really embracing, he's really flaunting this whole idea that reviews don't define me, right? Maybe that should be the title of this episode: Reviews Don't Define Me. But he goes after people. He's got a chalkboard in his restaurant, and it says, "We have no butter, no ice, no lemon, no ranch. We have no service," meaning they don't have, you just go to the counter, you order your pizza, and then they tell you when it's ready and you go sit down. There's no waiter, waitress, there's no servers. So we have no service. We charge for bread. We charge for everything. We don't change TV channel. We don't take suggestions. We need an attitude adjustment. What can you do? Hate us on Yelp. Give us a 1-star review and get 50% off any pizza. And then there's a line and it says, Costco has a humongous pie, 18 inches with tons of ranch, only $9.95, next exit. In other words, if you don't like it, you can leave and go get the thing that you want, because that's not what we have. We're not Costco. We're not playing on price. We're not wholesale. We don't have ranch. We're not selling you American pizza. We're not interested in your ideas, because you're not chefs and you're not Italian, about how we should be doing it. This is what we do. And if that's not your thing, that's okay. but we're not going to change it to try to make you happy. And he's got a whole thing. You should check it out in Pink Goldfish. He has a idiot of the week on his website. He makes fun of customers who ask stupid questions. I think he has the stupid question of the week. It's absolutely fantastic. So remember the beginning. What are your 1-star reviews? Have you been beating yourself up for the 1-star reviews? Do you think that you should somehow be able to live a life with only 5-star reviews? If you feel that way, remember Amber Share. If the best the planet has to offer can get a 1-star review, you don't have a chance of pleasing everyone, right? You're not the Grand Canyon. You're not one of the natural wonders of the world. And yet you are. You're amazing. You're fantastic. You're wonderful. You're powerful. You're strong, but you're also imperfect. And there's no way to separate those two things, right? The goal isn't perfection. The goal is beautiful imperfection. Remember the concept of wabi sabi. So tell us on Apple, tell us on Spotify, tell us on YouTube about any imperfections that you noticed. Share any comments or questions. I'd love to add a section in here where I answer your questions or your comments on how would I use this with parenting? How would I use this with my partner? How would I use this in my business? How would I use this with my own career? I'd love to be helpful in that way. I'll read your question or your comment on the next episode and answer it for you there. So I'd love to interact with you that way. But that's it. Subpar Parks, Amber Share. Every national park has at least one-star review. And if the Grand Canyon can't make everyone happy, neither can you. My name is David Rendall. This is the Imperfectionist Podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you listen in next time. Like it, share it, subscribe to it, or give it a 1-star review, because any attention is better than no attention at all. Have a great week. Stay imperfect.